Well, it's 1 minute after 4 o'clock, and in the grand tradition of CLE programs, let's start. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our program, Best Practices for Large-Scale Development, Understanding the Law. My name is John Dernbach. I'm a professor here at Widener University Commonwealth Law School in Harrisburg, and I direct the school's Environmental Law and Sustainability Center. I will moderate today's program. A growing number of municipalities are looking for ways to reconcile local quality of life consistent with new large-scale development, including redevelopment. In this program, our speakers will address the current state of municipal land use law, the economics of large-scale development, and best practices for mitigating environmental and social impacts of large development. We have three experienced and expert speakers today. Donald Miles is a retired zoning and environmental law attorney, a former 24-year Pennsylvania municipal solicitor, and a board member of the Sierra Club. He lives in Bethlehem. Thomas Au is president of the Clean Air Board of Central Pennsylvania, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving air quality. He formerly served as Assistant Chief Counsel at the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, where he advised programs that protect air, water, and land resources. Jamie Keener is the CEO of Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation, a certified planner, and a licensed realtor. He is a former Tobiana Township, Monroe County supervisor, and a former Hamden Township Zoning Hearing Board member. Each of our speakers will speak for 10 minutes. After they are all completed, each speaker will have the opportunity to respond to the other two. Then we will open the floor, so to speak, for questions from you. And I see familiar faces in the audience, and so that's a good thing as well. If you want to get CLE credit, by the way, check on the chat box at the end of the presentation to download the form. Well, that's it for my introduction. We begin with Donald Miles.
Thank you, John. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this meeting. Greetings from snowy Bethlehem. Bethlehem is in the center of the Lehigh Valley, which a couple of years ago was mentioned in an article in a national newspaper as one of the top 10 areas for new warehouse construction in the world, not the US, but the world. So we're very familiar with large development projects here. I wanted to start out by giving just a very brief summary of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, which is the main planning tool for zoning in Pennsylvania. It was adopted in 1974 by the legislature and amended again in 78, 88, and 2000. I'm not going to go into all the details. It allows for municipalities to have zoning ordinances and comprehensive plans that are supposed to provide input to the zoning ordinance. Not every municipality in Pennsylvania has a comprehensive plan and a zoning ordinance, but most do. The two key things I think for our purposes to know about the Municipalities Planning Code is that during all of its enactments, the major input politically to the enactment was by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, a very influential lobby in Pennsylvania. And their key accomplishment over all of those years was making a comprehensive plan adopted by a county and or a municipality non-binding. So the most useful land use planning tool, a comprehensive plan in Pennsylvania, contrast to most other states, is only a suggestion. So what's the process for adoption of a municipal zoning ordinance? First is a comprehensive plan process. Most municipalities hire professional planners to develop a comprehensive plan, and that plan usually includes zones, proposed zones, that either limit or exclude large or intensive development. That comprehensive plan proposal is reviewed by the regional planning agency if the municipality has one. Not everybody does. And by the planning, the comprehensive, the planning commission of the municipality with public input at a series of hearings. The planning commission then makes a recommendation to the governing body, which adopts the comprehensive plan. And there's also an opportunity for public comment at that stage. Once there's a comprehensive plan, then there is a process for enacting a zoning ordinance, which also has public hearings and public input. And when the municipality has a comprehensive plan and a zoning ordinance in place, then they are in a position to review development proposals. A summary of the process of a typical large development approval process is that first there's usually a sketch plan, which is a non-binding kind of general diagram of what is being proposed with some textual support so that the developer can get a feeling from the municipality how they feel about what's being proposed. The key filing is a preliminary plan, which once it's approved, contains most of the provisions to permit the development, although there is a later final plan that includes specific details for things like widths of roads and things. But the preliminary plan is the key document. That preliminary plan is referred by the municipality to the regional planning agency that reviews it. There's opportunity for public comment there, and then makes a recommendation of the proposal to the municipality. At that time also, the municipality's engineer reviews the preliminary plan and sends a report to the planning commission as to whether there are provisions of the plan that do not comply with the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan. The planning commission then has a hearing on the preliminary plan and has public comment, and then makes a recommendation to the governing body, which should include a comment about whether portions of the development are complying with the comprehensive plan, even though it's not required that they do. Then the governing body reviews the comprehensive plan at public hearings and approves or rejects the plan. And at that point, although the plan has not reached its final plan stage, after a preliminary plan approval, objectors can file a lawsuit to challenge either the procedure of which the plan was adopted or whether the substance of the plan complies with the township zoning ordinance. And those appeals are filed in county court. They can be appealed to the Commonwealth Court and even the Supreme Court, although very, very few zoning appeals reach the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. A very fine Widener law student, June Zhang, worked to develop the skeleton of a model zoning provision to deal with large development impacts, and Tom Au and I contributed to that, and I believe you have a copy of the model zoning provisions in your materials. I won't go into all the details. The key things that we wanted to focus on was having good current definitions of the warehouse types. The most impactful warehouse type is the distribution center, which is mostly what's being built these days. That's like the Amazon or the Walmart distribution center. And that has the most intense impact on a community. The key details of the model zoning provisions deal with the scale and intensity and environmental impacts of the proposal. Many municipalities do not have a detailed plan such as this. They just say whether what they call generally warehouses. And we make a distinction between warehouses as buildings that primarily store things for a company to go to that company's offices, or retail stores, as opposed to a distribution center, which does that, but also supplies items directly to consumers. And the things that we in the model zoning provisions want municipalities to focus on revolve around the most intense impacts of a distribution center, which involved air pollution. Diesel trucks can pollute the air. Diesel trucks built since 2009 have to have very good diesel air pollution filters. They're very good. They're over 90% effective. The problem is, though, they have to be replaced every so many hundreds of thousands of miles. And if they're not, and some companies don't, the trucks are very polluting. Traffic is a major impact of a distribution center. Noise, lighting. Some of them are lit up like the Phillies baseball stadium. And stormwater. When you have huge expanses of both the building and the surrounding parking lots, there can be major stormwater impacts. I won't go further. There may be questions about the model zoning provisions later on, and we'll try to deal with them. So what are the ways that a developer of a large project may get around a zoning ordinance that prohibits what they want to do? Many of the large developments in a zoning ordinance go through either something called a conditional use, which is a review by the governing body with conditions that must be met, or a very similar procedure called special exception that goes to the zoning hearing board. Those folks are appointed by the governing body. They're not elected. And there are also conditions that have to be met. Whether those conditions are met is the key thing in a conditional use or special exception. And sometimes a large developer dealing with a small or a rural municipality has experts that can overwhelm the review process by that municipality and attempt to show that they have met the conditions when in reality, maybe they haven't, or maybe there's portions of the conditions that needed to be explored that were not. So that's one way a developer of a large project might get around the requirements of a zoning ordinance. The developer can also request a zoning amendment to change the provisions of the ordinance that prohibit them from doing what they want to do with the large project. And if the municipality says, no, we're not going to amend our ordinance, the developer can file in court a lawsuit called a curative amendment, which says either the process of the zoning provision that they don't like did not follow the municipalities planning code provisions, or that the substance of it is in violation of the municipalities planning code. Perhaps it provides too small an area in the municipality to support the likely kinds of uses that would be made. Every municipality under the municipalities planning code has to provide for every use, unless it's part of what's called a multi-municipal zoning plan, in which the group can get together and say, okay, all the warehouses are going to be in Township B, and Township A doesn't have to have any warehouses. Or what has happened in a number of places in the last few years, the developer can seek an amendment or a repeal of the portions of the ordinance that they don't like by changing the governing board politically. And they can then have new provisions that they like adopted by the municipality. I'm familiar with that happening in the Lehigh Valley. In the township that I represented, a very major developer spent money and political leverage to change the governing body of the township. And they then, at the request of the developer, rezoned an agricultural only area of the township, which was about 25% of the township, that had been in place for 24 years, into an industrial zone that allowed a 700-acre industrial complex of warehouses to be built in what had been the agricultural zone. So that change was not done through legal processes, it was done through a change of the governing body. So if zoning isn't forever, what can a municipality do to make sure that a developer cannot get by the zoning ordinance to develop in farmland or open space, which is the usual situation that the municipality wants to preserve? The most effective and the most permanent way to do that is to purchase the development rights of the landowner so that the land will always remain in farmland or open space. And that means paying the landowner the difference between the land's value as farmland or open space and its value as its ultimate development for, say, a shopping center or a distribution center. Obviously, that requires money. So either the municipality or in many cases, the county must establish a fund that they can use to purchase those development rights. Once the development rights are purchased, the land is preserved, and even if the zoning is changed, these large developments could not take place on that land. There are two other things that either the municipality, well, not the municipality, that the regional planning agency can do if it's funded properly by the county. And that is to provide enough extra funding to the regional planning agency so that that agency can provide expert attorneys and expert land use planners to small or rural municipalities whose attorney or engineer may not be have the expertise to deal with an attack on their zoning ordinance by a well-financed developer. Some municipalities do not have their own engineer. They may share their engineer with other municipalities. Their attorney may be a generalist that's not that familiar with zoning laws. So a regional planning agency funded by the county could provide such attorneys and land use planners who are experts to the municipality that doesn't have them or can't afford them. And the other thing that regional planning agency can do is to give municipalities the expertise through land use planners that are hired by the planning agency to adopt the kind of progressive zoning ordinance amendments that is suggested by our model zoning provisions. Many small municipalities don't have any expertise to amend their zoning ordinance. It might have been adopted 20 years ago. And if the regional planning agency can provide them with the expertise to redo their zoning ordinances in a more modern way to deal with the intense development that we're talking about, that will allow them to have the sorts of ordinances that are displayed by our model provisions that you have copies of. So that's my portion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Don. Tom, you're next.
Well, thank you. I will go into a PowerPoint presentation now. There we go. Thank you. My name is Thomas Howe. I'm the president of the Clean Air Board Central Pennsylvania. I was a former DEP attorney, so I bring some expertise on the regulatory side of things. And we'll talk about, start off with the Cumberland County Comprehensive Plan. The plan includes some conservation goals, recognizing the importance of the county's natural, cultural, and historic and recreational resources. And so there are two goals I would like to highlight. One is the goal of trying to conserve significant natural resources to support the physical, social, and economic health of Cumberland County. And the second goal was agricultural preservation, to preserve agricultural land, to enhance the county's economy and maintain its rural character. Now, as Don mentioned, this is part of the county comprehensive plan. It's not binding on the county's municipalities. So there are, I guess, obstacles to these goals unless the municipalities also buy into the goals. And they can do so through their own municipal comprehensive planning process. One of the things that we see in Cumberland County is, as in Lehigh County, is a large development of warehouses. And this is a 1971 aerial photo of an area west of Carlisle, exit 44 on Interstate 81. And over the years, from 2006, the warehouse footprint has grown to include basically taking over farmland and developing a very intense in sort of industrial based in that area. And this is 2012, and it seems like that area is fully developed, but on the west side of that road, there are additional warehouses being built and planned. And this is going on all up and down Interstate 81 in Cumberland County, as well as through the east of Harrisburg from on Interstate 78 into the Lehigh Valley. So we have identified potential harms from this massive large-scale development. One is every time you build a warehouse or have a large industrial development, you lose green space, you lose agricultural land. You also have a problem with accelerated stormwater runoff from impervious parking lots. And this, Don mentioned traffic noise and congestion and the increases of air pollution from concentration of truck traffic. These problems, I think all municipalities realize, and they try to deal with it through their site development plans and zoning practice. But basic to a lot of this is a realization that Pennsylvania has an environmental rights amendment. And many of you have seen this before. Pennsylvania adopted the Environmental Rights Amendment in 1972. And for many years, it remained dormant. And even though the people have a right to clean or pure water and the preservation of natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values, the courts have not enforced the amendment in a very vigorous fashion. One of the things that is hidden is in this amendment, it's not just Commonwealth agencies that is the trustee for the resources. Municipalities are also a trustee for the resources. And this became abundantly clear in one case in 2013, and that is the Robinson Township case decided by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Well, that court struck down two provisions of an oil gas statute, which would have preempted and superseded local ordinances which regarding oil and gas activities, and would have required reasonable development in all zoning districts in the municipality for oil and gas activities. The court found that the General Assembly went too far, that there are, in the Pennsylvania Constitution, there are inherent obligations of municipalities as trustees under the Environmental Amendment to conserve and maintain the public environment and the quality of life that the General Assembly could not change via statute. And the implication is from the Supreme Court, both in the plurality opinion and the concurrent opinion, is that this local zoning is very important because it protects the quality of life of Pennsylvania residents, and that permitting industrial use in every zoning district would degrade the corpus of the trust, that is the air, water quality. And so, the court opined that economic development cannot take place at the expense of unreasonable degradation of the environment. Now, this opinion gives municipalities the flexibility to fashion their zoning rules to accommodate growth and to protect environmental values. I think this is sort of an awakening of the court to the vital importance of municipal government. And through adoptions of best practices, I think municipalities can accommodate growth and reduce environmental impact. We looked at making provisions, adding provisions that would either through zoning or through other ordinances establish more efficient traffic flow from large-scale development, things that would encourage green technologies such as electric vehicles for moving freight in warehouse yards, and creating physical barriers between industrial use and other land uses, such as tree line separation between residential neighborhoods and industrial warehouse neighborhoods. And there are other impacts that can be reduced via site development practices. Don talked about lights that are as bright as a baseball stadium. Well, you can reduce light pollution in a site development plan. You can reduce noise. You can use shore power instead of idling. And there are multiple ways to reduce stormwater runoff and respect our existing neighborhoods. One of the things that that's important is that, and I think most municipal solicitors recognize this, is that some areas of regulations are off limits to municipalities. And these are generally areas where the state and federal government have already occupied the field, and as they've issued permits which govern emissions or discharge of waste. And municipal governments cannot simply add on new requirements in those areas. But there are other areas which are completely within the domain of municipalities. Things like stormwater. DEP may set general guidelines, but it's up to the municipalities to regulate stormwater runoff. Another area is DEP and the EPA may set guidelines on emissions from trucks, but the state General Assembly has recognized that municipalities can enforce idling rules. There are other areas with regard to sewage. If sewage is generally considered a municipal obligation to regulate. So, there is a gray area between what municipal governments can do and what the federal and state governments have already regulated. But there are ways that municipalities can exercise power in those areas as well. And our review of best practices indicate that they're the existing tools that municipalities use are suitable and adequate for many of the problems that have been identified. Site development plans can address light pollution, noise, visual impairments, and public access. Traffic and congestion can be reduced. We have a requirement that there be proximity to arterial roads, and these problems can be addressed and identified through vigorous traffic studies. And as Don mentioned, open space and agriculture can be addressed through agricultural easements, and that's a very vital tool in Cumberland County right now. So I'm just going to go through a list of things that are in the written materials, and these are simply supplemental zoning or regulatory provisions. Municipalities could ask for an environmental impact assessment included in the site development plan. They could ask for measures to mitigate air pollution. They could ask that the development plan be consistent with the municipal comprehensive plan, and so forth. What we have also included in the written materials is the tri-county model zoning ordinance applicable to large-scale development of warehouses and trucking, and that's in Dauphin County, Cumberland County, and Perry counties have this tri-county model ordinance. And finally, I would like to leave it discussion to trying to strike that balance between growth and conservation, as the Pennsylvania Supreme Court recognized. The municipalities have a large role to play in maintaining a quality of life for their citizens. And municipalities also have to be mindful of their duties as a trustee, a duty of prudence, of loyalty, and of impartiality. And finally, municipalities that are proactive in planning for future growth will have a far easier time in maintaining a quality of life for its citizens. This recognizes that certain municipalities may not want to be proactive and or simply want to be reactive when growth opportunities occur. And I think it's incumbent on citizens to engage with the municipal officials to do proper planning. And thank you. And I'll turn it over to Jamie Keene.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. Jamie?
Yes, thank you, Tom. I'm going to pull up my presentation here and we will get underway. So yeah, Tom, I appreciate you closing with that last statement about trying to strike that balance between land use regulations and economic development. As the CEO for Cumberland Area Economic Development, certainly that is one of our goals, is to continue to promote economic growth in the county. I will tell you that as in engineering and planning for the last 30 years, and most recently with working for an engineering firm that did a lot of warehouse development, I bring a perspective, I think, to the economic development world that is going to be somewhat attractive in Cumberland County, and that my planning background allows me to be a little more proactive in working with municipalities. And I know Kirk Stoner, the county planning director, is on here in those discussions where we can identify future land use that is more appropriate for industrial growth and large scale development versus continuing to eat up farmland. So certainly preservation is something that is on our mind as we continue to look at future land use. So I'll give you a little context of economic development in Cumberland County. We are the fastest growing county in the state of Pennsylvania. The federal government is our largest employer, having Carlisle Barracks and NSA Mechanicsburg as bases. We also have DLA New Cumberland. And if you are not aware, both NSA Mechanicsburg and DLA New Cumberland act as military distribution centers. They are parts, and they're basically military parts and pieces and supplies get distributed through those two bases. Looking at our industries, retail, trade, healthcare, social assistance, and you notice transportation and warehousing is the third highest industry for employment in the county. And again, we're in a county that's attractive to particular industry clusters. You see agribusiness, again, that supports our agricultural industry. But then transportation and warehousing because of our geographic location in the Northeast US. And then again, manufacturing, management, professional services, and tourism. As Tom mentioned, the county has a comprehensive plan and really is a basis for much of what we do and looking forward. And the three main pillars are to conserve, which Tom talked a lot about, but then there's also grow. And within the growth area, it is economic development, it's housing, it's community facilities, and it's our land use. And then to connect, which is transportation, much again with being in the warehouse distribution industry sector, transportation is a large part of that. So what is the purpose of economic development? And this comes directly from the comprehensive plan, is to increase the tax base, increase our median incomes, increase employment opportunities, and diversify our tax base. Within the comp plan, objective 1 in the growth section is to attract new businesses to Cumberland County. And again, as an economic development agency, that is much of what we do. We develop a marketing campaign and meet with industry clusters that would be well suited for locating and existing, and my screen is in the way here, supporting existing businesses in the county. Objective 2 is to retain and expand the businesses currently located. So, much of what we do is to look for business retention and try to work with employers that are already here, but then also try to attract new ones too, and expand existing businesses as best possible. There are 2 strategies: develop and implement a business expansion program that establishes consistent communication with our top employers. So we go out and meet with them. Again, identify what their needs are. If they have regulatory issues that they're dealing with, what can we do to assist them with overcoming them or, complying with them. And we also, strategy B talks about retention of our military installations. Again, they are distribution centers within Cumberland County or adjacent to. So how does that tie into CAEDC? We just completed our update of our strategic plan. And again, I will tell you that, I'm excited about about where we're headed, again, to create an economic balance. Our mission is to promote and advance the overall economic health of Cumberland County. And our strategic priority A is to facilitate a healthy economic development ecosystem in the county. So again, we realize that there is going to continue to be economic development. There's going to continue to be growth. And why is that? Well, demand. And I think most recently with COVID, I think we're seeing a lot of what that demand has done to our logistics centers because, and I have a note here about the increase in online buying really has driven the demand for warehousing and fulfillment centers. But really, when we're looking at economic development in the county, we're going to look at it as in a balance. We want to continue to support and grow our businesses. We want to continue to advance our labor market, add more people to that labor market and provide workforce housing to be able to support them. And then also be conscious of environmental impacts. We at CAEDC also are the Tourism Bureau. So if we are degrading our environment, it has a negative effect on us being able to attract tourists to Cumberland County as well. And we promote a lot of our outdoor activities, trails and view sheds and our trout streams and so forth. So we are going to be keeping that in mind as we go forward and support decisions on economic development. So warehouse distributions and fulfillment centers, why Cumberland County, Pennsylvania? We are the Keystone State. I think everybody knows that and should understand that we in Cumberland County are strategically located for distribution. We have Interstates 81, 83, and we have the Turnpike all coming together here in Cumberland County. We are within a 10-hour drive of over 50% of the US population. So think about that as the population over the past 9 months has been online ordering things. You know, how do they get that? Well, it comes through our county, a lot of it. And as I mentioned, I heard a stat yesterday that there's a 40% increase in online purchasing since COVID-19 started. Again, imagine what that has done to the Amazons, the FedExes, and the UPSs trying to get those products from where they're manufactured, whether it's overseas or across the country, to where you're buying those. Let's talk a little bit more about warehouse distribution and fulfillment centers and the large impacts. The site requirements really needs to be in an industrial zone. The typical lot size is about 50 to 150 acres. I was involved with the Procter & Gamble site down in Shippensburg. It's in Franklin County, but it was 1.8 million square feet. Buildings range again from 200,000 up to 1.8 million. Now some of the fulfillment centers are a little bit smaller than that, again, depending on the product that's being distributed from there. Typically they want access to an interstate, and I think Tom talked about, some regulating arterial roads. Well, typically your arterial roads are going to be those that are intersecting with your interstate interchanges. And again, they want to be within 1 to 2 miles. They don't want to be improving local roads or impacting local roads to the point it's going to add to their cost for the development. And also rail, and we don't have a very robust rail system in the county, but there is some that's still here. And I think, again, from an environmental standpoint, we can continue to encourage rail access and rail delivery. And I just had a conversation yesterday about that in one of our local municipalities. We're going to be looking at supporting some more additional rail service. And site utilities, again, they need power, they need water, they need sewer. And of course, stormwater has been a significant issue over the past 30, 40 years here since the NPDS has come on. I will tell you that there are a lot of BMPs that are being implemented. They must be implemented in order to get their NPDS permits to be able to occupy the site. So I would say that, the model ordinance, while it acknowledges that the NPDS permit requirement that is part of their approvals is addressing BMPs pretty significantly. Some of the industrial trends we're seeing, cold storage needs are rising. Again, we talk about the grocery stores and their needs. We look at paper products and the shortage that we've seen. A lot of it is because of the logistics. They aren't being stored in the warehouses, and it's just caused the increased demand has caused a strain on the logistics system. Technology developments are shaping industrial space. Before we get on here, Don was talking about HQ warehouses, which are multi-story warehouses that are there's robots that are picking product, and the nice thing about it is it's a reduced footprint on the land. And so again, I see opportunities for that to continue to grow. The downfall with that is you're going to see an increase in the height. So once you have increased height, then your view sheds are impacted by that as well. Distribution speed is blurring the lines between storage and retail. So again, think about it. You used to go to the store. You used to go to Walmart or Target and, you know, get your product. Well, a lot of times people are getting that directly now. So you're cutting out that retail middle person. So the speed with which and the demand with which the consumer wants their product delivered now has created an impact on warehouse distribution and logistics. And then artificial intelligence and machine learning are driving efficiencies. Again, autonomous vehicles, robotics, all of that is assisting in the efficiency of the logistics industry. So some of the sustainability measures, I think Don and Tom talked a little bit about those, and I certainly support them as well. There's logistics and planning and transportation efficiencies. As we looked at future land use, where should we site these places? Where should they be? And in order to cut down on, local road impacts, on, the amount of travel and trips and miles that these trucks are on the road. Again, I talked about robotics and automation, the benefits of that, autonomous vehicles, stormwater management BMPs. Again, I talked about the NPDS and the opportunities that are already there and being implemented. Sustainable power options. I know there's been discussion about solar. One of the downfalls of solar on warehouse roofs is it increases the cost for the structure. That's something that has to be taken into consideration because of the steel that's holding the roof on would have to be increased in size to be able to support the weight of the solar panels. Wind, we're not in the best location, being in the valley. We're not in the best location for wind, and there's other pushback from wind uses as well. Water reuse. I know a lot of people are now looking at taking the roof water and putting that into collection systems and storage tanks to be able to have that for fire. So there is some reuse there. The water capture or water reuse is more than a gray water reuse and treatment. What the rainwater capture I talked about. And then, rail versus truck. We again don't have a significant rail presence in the county, but on the eastern side we do in NOLA and the yards there. But from a distribution standpoint, most of that is happening through the trucks. Some of the obstacles to industrial development, again, is land use regulations. I think we need to look more into the future and identify those lands which are better suited for the industrial development. Again, I've talked to Kirk Stoner about looking at land and trying to identify and looking at the future land use plan and working with municipalities to make sure that their zoning maps are up to date and can accommodate that on a more efficient manner while protecting agricultural lands as much as possible. There was talk a little bit about the special exception versus conditional use. I'm not going to go into those details. Subdivision land development ordinance. You must consider design and construction limitations, and especially on the larger scale developments. I know even in the Lehigh Valley, if there's some significant cut and fills that need to happen in order for these 50 to 100 acre sites to be developed. And there's public opposition. Yet many of the people that desire to have those products the next day, they're the ones oftentimes that are the ones that are coming out and say we don't want warehousing. But it is a demand thing. We continue to see the demand grow. We're going to continue to see the fulfillment and warehouse distribution buildings being built. Opportunities again for doing industrial development, right? Being proactive and identifying those 50 to 100 acre sites and compiling them ahead of time, updating the ordinances to reflect the needs of the industrial user. Some of them, the parking requirements are outdated. The truck parking is outdated. Really, it's the users that know what they need. Sometimes I think the municipal officials don't trust that they're going to provide what's needed, but over-regulate. we have to require environmental sustainability. Certainly as part of what I've said is from a balance of a healthy economic development ecosystem. We need to continue to do that. And, while the model ordinances are a good starting point, industrial uses are changing rapidly. Again, coming out of COVID, I know there's going to be changes, automation, storage, the logistics industry is going to be changing. So we're going to need to continue to look at those ordinances and update them to meet the needs and be most efficient and most environmentally conscious. That's what I have. Look forward to any questions.
So thank you for 3 excellent presentations. I think because we're running a little late on time, or a little behind, if you will, I'd like to go straight to the chat, and there's a couple of questions in the chat. First question, Tom, is for you. Can you give examples of easements that are used to preserve agricultural open space?
Okay. Actually, I think Jamie might be more involved in this than I am, but I know Cumberland County has purchased agricultural easements with, for farmland along highway corridors, which preserve the agricultural use. Basically, it's a tax abatement program for the farmer who commits to keeping the land in agriculture. Now, I think Don Miles has some experience with that as well. Do you want to jump in? I have not been deeply involved in that.
Well, the purchase of the development rights for the land is the most permanent solution. The problem there is, the cost that's involved. There can be a significant difference between the value of the land as a farm and the value of the land as a distribution center. But farmers, particularly in the Lehigh Valley, the average age of our farmers is over 55. Some of them look to get their retirement funds from selling for a warehouse or shopping center. So purchasing the development rights in order to preserve that land is essential. It requires funding, and it requires the counties to budget for that. Both of our counties, Lehigh and Northampton County, do have a modest fund for the purchase of farmland. But in order to keep pace with the development of the land, the amount of funding that's available by the 2 counties now would have to probably quadruple.
Yeah, Cumberland County also has a fund for purchasing agricultural easements.
Jamie, did you want to add anything?
No, Cumberland County does a very good job. Stephanie Williams, I think she is on here from the Cumberland County Planning Department. She's deeply involved with the easement program. So yeah, I don't have a lot of expertise there, but know that that is something that's pursued for ag preservation in the county.
Okay, I've got, there's at least 4 more questions in the chat, and I'll just tell you, I know we're coming up on 5 o'clock, and my thought process is that if you need to get off at 5:01, which would be the end of our hour, that's just fine. But if we've got a couple of questions that we haven't answered yet, my intention would be to continue until we do, and just invite you to, if you need to drop off after 5 o'clock. So there's a question here it goes like this. How can you balance a municipality that is overloaded with housing development and not enough business development? Revenue is needed for the municipality, but adding businesses as warehouses takes up a lot of open space. How can the overload be fixed to bring it into balance? It's not addressed to anyone in particular.
So, I mean, that's more on the housing development side. I mean, zoning is the opportunity to restrict the amount of residential development that occurs within a municipality. You know, the municipalities need a certain amount of business to be able to balance the negative impacts, and typically it is negative impacts from residential development on the tax base. So that's why we look for a healthy economic development ecosystem that includes a tax base that's able to support and not be burdensome on the municipality, on the residents. I will tell you, you know, having lived in the Poconos for 12 years, my taxes up there were about 3 times what they are here because of the school property tax. So we are very fortunate in Cumberland County with I think the relative conservative management of our taxes. So, but it can always be better. Again, it's non-residential development will help offset the property taxes that are affecting each resident.
Okay.
Yeah, I still live in the borough of Carlisle, but I think the borough of Carlisle is looking at mixed use districts where there's, you know, commercial uses and residential uses and industrial uses in the same zoning district. So, you know, multiple uses is a way to balance residential with commercial.
Don, did you want to add anything?
Well, it's true that a distribution center does provide more real estate tax probably than a farm, but it's not very good at generating earned income tax for employees that might work there, because warehouses and distribution centers are increasingly having fewer and fewer employees. Jamie mentioned the high cube warehouses. They're like skyscrapers full of racks that are picked by robots, and they have very few employees. So while the building might pay real estate tax, it's not going to bring in a lot of new employees who are going to live in the town and contribute to earned income tax.
Okay. Next question is, does affordable housing get much consideration in the planning process? Is that part of the balancing?
It's absolutely part of the balancing. I'm glad they brought that up, because one of the priorities in our strategic plan is workforce, and one of the strategic initiatives is to develop a workforce housing model, working with developers and municipal officials. And yeah, affordable housing, there's a significant need in Cumberland County, and we are going to be addressing that over the next few years.
Tom, Don, anything you want to add?
Well, the affordable housing situation in the Lehigh Valley, for example, is horrible. The average income necessary to be able to either purchase a typical house or even to pay typical rent is not enough. There's probably more than 1/3 to 40% of the people that live in the Lehigh Valley are spending, if they're renting, they're spending maybe 40 or 50% of their income on rent, which is too high for them to have a standard of living that's satisfactory. So it's a major problem. There's too little affordable housing in the Lehigh Valley, and the incomes of the average person here are not enough to pay the average rent.
Which affects transportation, because then they have to commute further from other residential areas to where those jobs are, which is similar to what we're dealing with.
Okay. Next question is, what is the requirement of Cumberland County's development for recycling plants, if any, especially regarding solar panels for business development?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand when it says regarding solar panels for recycling plants. Yeah, I don't know that there's a requirement for solar panels.
The next question here is,
In answer to an earlier question about the agricultural land preservation, we have an answer from Stephanie Williams that Cumberland County has preserved 21,000 acres of land since 1989 through the agricultural reservation program. So that's a significant number of acres.
Good, good. So a question here is addressed to Jamie. What types of incentives would help encourage environmental best practices such as green stormwater infrastructure?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, I think there are some of them that are doing it partly because of the need to deal with stormwater management in like the rainwater capture. I know there were one of the sites in Newville, they were looking at injection wells in order to minimize the runoff. They were going to be taking the rainwater, which is clean water, and putting them going through a filter, but going into injection wells. So I know some of the developers are already looking at green infrastructure, green stormwater. I know the BMPs are driving that. I would say if there are tax incentives, there might be an opportunity for developers to put the money into the green infrastructure, although that it would reduce the potential tax revenues coming to the municipality. I think that would be one way to incentivize it, is basically give them a tax break to be able to provide the infrastructure.
Yeah, let me add to that basic to this is that many municipalities have obligations to create stormwater plans and facilities under the MS4 program, and that's a permitting program that EPA has imposed on many urban or suburban municipalities. So there is an incentive for municipalities to reduce stormwater runoff, and any new development that is cited. There are opportunities in those areas to reduce impervious pavement and take other measures to eliminate stormwater runoff.
Yeah, and I know the county has engaged a consultant that's assisting in looking at more regional benefits. Oftentimes we're trying to control stormwater on a local basis on the site, but sometimes it could be more impactful if it's done on a regional basis.
So there's two more questions in the chat, and I'm thinking we can try and take them both and see if we can get reasonably brief answers and then perhaps wrap it up. The first of the remaining two questions, and I'm not, well, anyway, has the legality or enforceability of the consistency with municipal and comprehensive plan language included in the model ordinance been questioned or put to any test? If so, what was the outcome?
Well, as I mentioned, under the Municipalities Planning Code and case law, a proposal does not have to comply with either the local comprehensive plan or the regional comprehensive plan. So the references in any of the ordinances, including the proposed model ordinance, is advisory, but it can't be binding. Everything that's binding has to be in the zoning ordinance itself.
Okay. And then the final question is, are municipalities and counties addressing climate change through planning, and can climate mitigation measures be required for large-scale developments?
Yeah, so I can address that. Carlisle Borough has started a climate action group. I think Tom and I were on a call last week, I believe it was, and the county is developing a climate action program as well. So, that you are going to see more information coming out about that, and measures that will be addressing some of the impacts of climate change. Tom, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think that climate action offers a lot of opportunity to engage into public and structural improvements in our environment. Green space, parks, things that people would like to see, and it can be part of a site development plan, and may not necessarily have to be.
Okay. I see a note here in the chat from Lisa Hopkins who says, Don, that you answered a question similar to hers. So she doesn't require any clarification of the question that she asked earlier. I think that really basically brings us to the end here. I want to just say that if you like this program, you may be interested in other resources that the Environmental Law and Sustainability Center at Widener provides. These include a detailed listing of Article 1, Section 27 resources, principally books and articles. If you're interested in finding that, Google these words, Widener Commonwealth and Article 1, Section 27 resources. The students in a class that I teach also draft model sustainability ordinances for local governments. We post those and we provide links to their proposed model ordinances. If you want to find those, you can Google Widener Commonwealth and model sustainability ordinances. What I'd like to do is close by thanking Don and Tom and Jamie for 3 excellent presentations. If you're traveling tonight, be safe, but thank you all for joining our program this afternoon, and have a great holiday.
Thank you for your leadership, John.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.